Good afternoon and welcome to the People Power Lunch Hour Show. I'm your host, Vanessa Maria Graber. You're watching live on PhillyCam TV and on WPPM LP in Philadelphia. On today's show, we are going to be celebrating Pride. June is Pride Month, and with us we have two advocates of the LGBT community here in Philadelphia. In the first half hour, we'll speak with Linda Slodki, who is the executive director and co-founder of the Mount Airy Arts Garage. She is involved in planning a really great event that's happening this weekend for Philly Family Pride. In the second half hour, we'll be talking with Amber Hikes. She's the director of the Mayor's Office of LGBT Affairs here in Philadelphia. We'll talk about Pride, the event coming up this weekend, and much more. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the People Power Lunch Hour Show. I'm your host, Vanessa Maria Graber. And as I mentioned earlier, June is Pride Month, and there are many great events here in Philadelphia and throughout the nation to celebrate the LGBTQ community. On today's show, we're going to speak with two advocates from Philadelphia who have been doing really great work in the community, and they're gearing up for a great event this weekend in Mount Airy for Philly Family Pride. I'm joined by my special co-host today, Ricky Paul. Ricky, of course, is a longtime advocate of the LGBT community, and he's a producer here at WPPM with Silver Alert, a great program that airs Tuesdays from 4 to 6 p.m. that celebrates the LGBT community and really amazing music. He's been a fixture on the Philly arts and activist scene for over 2 decades, and he served on the PhillyCam Board of Directors for 6 years and also served on the board of DP Arts Consortium. He is one of our producers, as I mentioned, founder and artistic director of the Dumpster Players, and he hosts weekly program Silver Alert. Some of his activism includes ACT UP, Grassroots Queers, and Safeguards Project. Thanks for co-hosting the show today.
It's a pleasure to be here, Vanessa.
Well, we're excited to celebrate Pride. Of course, it's an important and historic month for the LGBT community. So we've invited Linda Slodki. Welcome.
Welcome, and thank you for having me. We're absolutely thrilled.
So, Linda, you have been involved with the Mount Airy Arts Garage with your wife or partner, Arlene, since 2009. And the Mount Airy Arts Garage is an arts organization, which you can tell us more about. And you've been organizing here in the LGBT community also for many years, most recently gearing up for this really great event that's happening in Mount Airy, which we'll tell our listeners and viewers about. So for folks that don't know, your background is actually not in arts. You are not the artist of the duo, right? How did you and your partner come to found the Mount Airy Arts Garage?
Well, actually, just to clarify, my wife is a visual artist. I'm a performing artist.
Oh, okay.
And so arts, have really been in my life all my life. However, I went the corporate route, and she was owner of Giovanni's Room, and then she went the visual arts route. The organization came about originally because Arlene had had this dream all her life about finding a place that artists could come together, meet each other, collaborate, grow, develop, and share, show their work. And whatever avenues they wanted to go in, they would have that opportunity. That was her dream. She's the dreamer. I'm the actualizer. So she said, I really want to do this. Will you help me make it happen? And that's how it all began. And today we are a community organization with, I would also say, socially conscious community arts organization that finds opportunities for emerging and professional artists, and then we take that creativity into the community as well to create more public art and work in the schools.
Wonderful. Ricky is also involved in the arts. Can you both talk about the importance of the arts in the LGBT community?
Yeah, you bring up socially conscious, and I just automatically equate that with Mount Airy. So how did that all come together?
Gosh, to begin with, we are a lesbian feminist household. So everything we do springs from that. Our organization is, and I'm not sure our organization would have flourished as much as it did if it were not in Mount Airy, because Mount Airy, Germantown, Mount Airy, Chestnut Hill, the Northwest communities are really the most diverse communities that you can find and welcoming. And so it was a natural that we live there, we create our home there, if you will, our center for the arts. So everything we've done includes a multiplicity of people, but at our heart, we're an LGBTQ family. And so everything we do has a queer tinge to it in many cases. International Women's Day celebrations, bringing in burlesque, bringing in lick, bringing in drag, and doing art exhibitions that focus on women and the power of women. That's one part of who we are.
So how did you guys come together? How did it form? How many years has this been in baking?
It's actually now in its 10th year. It started with a number of community meetings in Mount Airy, hosted by Weaver's Way in their space to invite artists. By the way, the second largest concentration of artists in the city is in the Northwest. Aside from Center City, area, it's in the Northwest. So we held weeks of community meetings for artists, and we had hundreds of artists pass through our doors and share their vision of what they would like to see happen. That's how it began. We are a highly collaborative organization. We have emerging artists who are learning. We have professionals who are working, selling, working in the schools, bringing creativity out there. And we went through a transition where we had a really large space that we were at. We rebuilt it with community support, upwards of $120,000, 5,000 square foot garage, and we had been closed for 22 years, and after we built it out, the owner loved it so much he sold it out from under us, and we were displaced. And then again, Mount Airy USA comes to our help, gives us a small flagship location, and now we are waiting for the build out of a new community center for the arts, 3,000 square foot. So the dream continues. We could have folded, we could have become another statistic, but it's the support and love of our community, it's the love of the artists, and I think just the vision to keep on going and to keep on creating that's brought us to the point where we are today.
That's so empowering to hear positive stories of change in this era that we're living in right now. So thank you for sharing that. So tell us a little about your story, you and Arlene, and how did you all get started in this?
Well, it was Arlene's vision. It was her dream. She wanted to make it happen. She said to me, help me make it happen. I left corporate, and it began as a nugget, and it's expanded. And, we're very deeply embedded in our community. And so this vision has really become a reality, which is very exciting. And eyes on the future.
Eyes on the future.
And more partners, more people we work with, more partnerships, then we all get to share in the vision, which is what created this upcoming event for Pride at the first ever Philly Family Pride Picnic and Arts Festival in Mount Airy.
So how do you define family? I know that it's a big word, and I'd love to hear your take on that.
Family. Well, to me, family is the family you're born with and your chosen family. And that can become extremely large and loving. And it's just very critical to be surrounded by family, whether it's chosen or whether it's by blood. It really helps get you through the day and the tough times.
I always tell people I'm blessed to be gay because the chosen family was something that I created, right? And it was because I'm gay. It helped to expand my horizons, not narrow them.
And where would you be without your chosen family?
Exactly.
There's no guarantees on how your family will react to finding out that you're queer. There's no guarantees. There are still people. We talked about it a lot. We look at the young, people of today, and we look at the events that are happening today, and we say it is so joyous and so joyful to see people celebrating and not have the shame that hung over so many of us. And I'm proud of our organization. I'm proud of my wife, who owned Giovanni's Room for 10 years. I'm proud of our community, and it's really exciting to see where we are today. And one thing, as you get older, the world gets smaller. And so your chosen family expands, and yet There are people you keep meeting that you actually have known over a long period of time. All comes full circle.
It's absolutely
And
true.
aren't we lucky to be in Philadelphia?
Yeah.
Aren't
yeah.
we lucky to be in a city that is so supportive and that you have an opportunity to be out, to be yourself without the shame and find that route?
That is a wonderful statement and so true. So we did find out a couple of facts about you that are just fascinating. Vanessa?
Yes, well, one of the things one of the things I read was that you were one of the first female rail engineers for Conrail.
It's true.
What was that like, being in that industry, and where does your feminism come into play with a role like that?
Well, I'm a child of the 60s, and I was at Barnard from 68 to 72. So my life was just thrown up into tumultuous experimentation and loving life and learning. And yes, it's true, I was one of the first 7 engineers hired on Conrail on the Northeast Corridor. So, it was as any circumstance at that time would have been when you were the first person, be the first black person or the first woman, or you break the white privilege that is going on in those circles. And it was challenging, and I'm just going to say we worked really hard to prove ourselves, not to the company, but to our crews. We had hard times, and it's wonderful to see a lot of it change today. But it was kind of exalting. I have to say, there's nothing wilder than, running a train through a station and everyone's like, oh my goodness, is that a woman driving the train? Yes, it is. And now it's every day.
Wow, particularly 40 years ago. I mean, people don't...
You have to say 40.
Oh, well, you said 70s, right? Hey, we all look amazing, so it's no big deal. You started when you were 12, right?
Right, Ricky, you got it.
But, it's particularly amazing, I think, when I saw a film recently that was set in 1980, and it was shot in 1980. And just to see the difference in the way that people interacted, particularly among minorities and marginalized groups, women in particular, it's just amazing when you're old enough to see how it's changed and have that perspective.
And look at the LGBTQ struggles of that time too. Look at what we went through with the AIDS epidemic. Look at the plays that are coming back today and have relevance today that were written at that time. Boys in the Band, Angels in America, etc.
Yeah.
One of the other things that we read was that you and Arlene were one of the first same-sex couples to marry in Pennsylvania.
We were.
Tell us about that moment.
I'm going to tell you an interesting story, and I'm not going to get too deeply into it because it's a wonderful story and we could have drinks over it and laugh and have a great time. But when we got married 3 times. The first in Montgomery County, which was nullified when it got sued. We ran up to Montgomery County when they were allowing LGBTQ marriages. It was nullified by the lawsuit. Then we went to Jersey when Jersey approved gay marriage, and then we went back to Pennsylvania to get married. We took our honeymoon with my mother and went to Vienna. That's another story. It was the most incredible time of our lives. When we got back to JFK, where in New York State at that time gay marriage was legal by law, we came in and we ended up doing a lot of interviews around this as well. We came into customs, U.S. Customs, and at the time we were there, the gentleman looked at us and said, "Who's the family?" And I said, "We're the family." And he said, "I asked you, who's the family?" And I said, "We're the family. This is my mother, she's my wife, we're the family." And he looks at us and he goes, and I looked at him and I said, "So are you telling me," because he got the wrong person for this. I said, "So are you telling me that in New York State, where the law says that gay marriage is legal, you're going to give us a hard time because of who we are as a family?" And he just stamped my passport and he left, and he told us to move on. I actually reported him, and she asked me, the person in charge of it said, "What shall we do?" And I said, "I just want him to be educated. Just educate this person not only about the law, but about respect and dignity for families that are coming through," because it was an awful experience. So Yeah, we were among the first.
A little sensitivity, please.
Yeah, a little, just a little, just a little.
And that was recently, right? In the last 10 years?
Yeah, oh yes.
Unbelievable.
Yes, that was
Shocking.
in JFK.
In JFK, of
In
all
JFK.
places, New York City.
So it just goes to show you. But I do believe he got his sensitivity training because they got back to us and said that it was handled. And, you know, I think that that was important, to stand up for our rights and to not be treated. You know, no one's going to bring me back to shame. Nobody. I'm not going to accept it. I'm not going to own it. And so there you have it. 3 really strong women, you know, with someone trying to shame us as we come back into the country was just unacceptable. But yes, we were among the first.
Wonderful. Well, you mentioned your travels and, you know, sensitivity, which leads us to our next question, which is, you know, what does the word pride mean to you, especially given that many places around the world, people are still persecuted, jailed, arrested for their sexuality?
Very simply, no shame. That's what pride means to me. I spoke to someone the other day, and I had mentioned earlier, and he said, gosh, you know, the biggest thing that strikes me is no shame. And we talked about that. You know, the shame that people bear, you know, the internalized homophobia, the pressures from your, no shame. Be who you are, love who you are, you know, and just live life.
And set an example for others.
Right.
You know, because not everyone has the strength to stand up for who
Thank
they
you
are.
for that, Ricky.
But when you're able to open those doors and be proud of who you are, it helps others, I think.
Right, and it's not only about being, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not only that you're brought into the mainstream of society and accepted, it's being proud of who you are and not letting anybody shame you.
Being comfortable in your own shoes.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Being proud of who you are, whoever that is.
Yeah. Good words.
So that brings us to the event, which is all about pride, right? Family pride. Tell us how the event came about and why you decided to do it in a place like Mount Airy.
Well, the place was obvious. I'll tell you very simply, I got a call from Evan Thornburg, who is the deputy director of the mayor's LGBT office, and she called me up and she said to me, so would you like to come together and have a conversation about the possibility of hosting some kind of event in Mount Airy? And I said, what time? And we got together. It was a no-brainer. Everything about this was a no-brainer. Philly Family Pride is a partner. The mayor's office is a partner. Mount Airy Art Garage is a partner. And everybody is bringing what they do and who they are to the table. Deciding the place was a no-brainer. It's going to be at Lovett Library Park, newly renovated, part of, you know, the Parks and Rec 2025 plan. Gorgeous outdoor area, definitely a center for creativity. And we're going to have, Philly Family Pride is doing a picnic. We're going to have music. We're going to have Anna Crucis Choir, and we're going to have Jan Jeffries from Music Over Movement, a.k.a. Mom. She's a drummer. And they're bringing in Yoruba drummers into the mix to invite everyone there to come and drum with them. So we're spreading the word for drummers. We have food trucks. We have a fine art and handcraft festival that will be accompanying it with all local artists, originally made goods and handcrafts. But I think most important out of all of this is that we're going to have resource tables from the queer community. The Northwest is a huge concentration of queer families. All the young'uns are downtown. And the families are in the Northwest. And there are trans families, there are, you know, gay families, there are just all kinds of queer families. And we believe that it's critical to have those resource tables there so you can go to your peers. PFLAG will be there, Galay, William Way, all queer resource organizations to be there to answer questions and perhaps to give direction to parents and children who may be looking for support. So we're excited. It's going to be going from 11 to 5 p.m. this coming Saturday at Lovett Library Park, which is 6945 Germantown Avenue. And we don't care that they're talking about rain. We're looking to send the rain away.
Those drums.
Those drummers will send the rain away, and everyone will have tents, and it's going to be glorious. So we're very excited. And I will say, that we've been working with the city for a number of years, the Arts and Culture Division, and I found out that the way that Evan found out to contact us was that Arts and Culture said, oh, you got to call Linda and Arlene over at the Mount Airy Art Garage. It's a natural. And so that's how it all came about. And there is so much buzz going on about this event. It is on every local email blast. It's in the press. The neighbors have been posting leaflets. So we're very excited by the partnership. It's stellar. We hope this is just the first.
Fantastic. It's so exciting.
It is.
Is there a website or something someone can...
You can go to our website, which is mountairyartgarage.org, MTAIRY artgarage.org. And also, just to say, this is a family event. We're going to have jugglers and face painters and balloon artists, so we'd love to have you.
Fantastic.
So how have Pride celebrations changed over the years? I imagine you both have participated in Pride celebrations either in Philadelphia or New York, or how do you think it's evolved, over time?
Well, the commercialization is a big change. I mean, I can remember the first Pride Parade in 1989 in Philadelphia, the first sanctioned one. And, it was basically activists coming down the street being jeered at by people on the side, on the sidewalks. That's what I remember.
It's true.
It was really, people were really not comfortable with it.
A lot of harassment.
A lot of harassment. And then, the commercialization sort of came in the 90s. But what's your take?
I'm with you on that, and they have expanded in size. One of the things I'm struck by is the increased business and corporate attendance at these events, because businesses are recognizing that, there is a big queer population within their own businesses, and to be supportive and to partner with their own employees and reach out is really critical. So if you look at our Pride events today, once you get down to Penn's Landing, you'll see A to Z, lots of corporations out there being supportive. So that's a big difference to me as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of a mixed blessing for me, because it's always like, well, what's the trade-off here, in terms of bringing in the corporate dollar? But I also think it's part of our job to keep them on task,
Agreed.
And say, hey, this is what we want. I know what you want, but we're willing to give you this, but...
And it's also in their end of the universe, being more, adding more benefits, being conscious of their trans workers, being conscious of trans benefits. Medical care for the queer community is really quite critical, and that has to be reflected in how you treat your populations there as well. So it's a good thing. And you're right, we have to keep an eye on how things roll to make sure they stay on the right path.
Yeah, and moving things forward, like, where are we going? Where are we going to be in 5 years? We're not done. We want more, we want more equality and less marginalization.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, speaking of moving forward, what's next? What do you hope to achieve, after this event, and how can people continue to interact with the Mount Airy Arts Garage?
Well, what's next is we are eagerly awaiting the groundbreaking of our new build-out, because then we can go back to a number of things we were doing. Currently, we have exhibitions. We have gallery space, but no exhibition space. So we're going back. Eventually, we'll have artist studios. We'll have gallery space. We'll be going back to performance, live performance, and large-scale citywide exhibition, particularly focused on social issues of the day. But also, we work in the schools, and we're artists in residence in the public schools. At Emlyn, we're doing the Community of Pride mural and literacy project. So you'll be seeing more of us. I will also say that as we go into the fall, we are partnering with Philadelphia Theater Company in a season-long partnership where we will be doing visual art exhibitions along with their shows, and their shows are focusing on women writers and issues of importance to women and the queer community next year. So we're psyched. We are just so happy about this, and more partnerships. You know, more partnerships, more deepening, more working together. That's really the direction, you know, get out of isolation as a one-up organization and partner more. Ricky and I, in fact, we pulled this together from a party.
That's right. You know, and I've always believed that activism is rooted in coalition building. And it's not to say that we have the same experience, but that we'll work together on the things we can agree on to move forward.
Right.
And that's something I'd like to hear a lot more.
Hear, hear.
Well, Linda Slodki, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. Thank you, Ricky.
Absolutely. Thank you. This has been great.
The event, one more time, is the Philly Family Pride Picnic and Arts Festival. It takes place this weekend, Saturday, June 23rd, from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. at Levitt Library Park in Mount Airy, located at 6945 Germantown Avenue.
And it's free.
And it's free. So for more information, you can visit their website, mountairyartgarage.org. Thank you so much. We're going to take a short break. And when we come back to the People Power Lunch Hour show, we're going to be speaking with Amber Hikes, who's also involved in this event. She's a director of the Mayor's Office on LGBT Affairs. Thank you for listening and watching. We'll be right back. Hello and welcome back to the People Power Lunch Hour show. I'm your host, Vanessa Maria Graber, joined by my special co-host, Ricky Paul. And we're here today to talk about Pride. June is Pride Month all across the nation, and we are celebrating here in Philadelphia with many great events. And we are joined by Amber Hikes, who is the director of the Mayor's Office on LGBT Affairs. The Mayor's Office on LGBT Affairs is joined in partnership with our previous guest, Linda Slodki from the Mount Airy Arts Garage, to put on an amazing event this weekend in Mount Airy to celebrate Philly Family Pride. We're going to talk about the event and the office and get to know a little bit more about Amber Hikes so that our community can be familiar with her and understand how this office can serve as a resource.
Awesome.
Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. This is exciting.
So we did a little bit of research. We wanted to get to know who you were.
Should I be nervous?
No, we didn't cover anything too crazy, but you know, one of the things that we learned is that you're a trained social worker and you got started in a really great organization, Upward Bound,
That's right.
that a lot of my friends have been involved in.
Cool.
And that you came to Philadelphia and you were at the University of Pennsylvania.
That's right. Yeah.
And you're originally from Atlanta.
That's right.
All right. Okay.
Very impressive.
Check.
And you also got your start at one of our favorite organizations that does really great youth media work, is the Attic Youth
That's
Center.
right. That's exactly right.
And then you worked with Equality PA on the Youth Law Project. And one of the things that we thought was really cool is that you were Philly Gay News Person of the Year for 2017.
That's right. That's exactly right.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And one of your major influences is Gloria Casares,
That's right.
who is somebody here who is an icon, not just to the LGBT community, but to activists and people who are working for social change.
That's exactly right. Icon in Philadelphia in general. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about your background in social work and advocacy and how that led you to this position.
Yeah, I would love to. So you did a lot of extensive research there. I can talk about Upward Bound in a second, but I think it's important to talk a little bit about how the LGBTQ work I did kind of led me here. And so I was fortunate to do my graduate work at the University of Pennsylvania, which is where I got my MSW, and it was there that I had my first opportunity to work with LGBTQ youth who are Philadelphians, right? And so that's what I did at the Attic. I was actually at the Attic yesterday, hanging out with Carrie Jacobs, kind of talking about some work that we're going to be doing in the future. And that work was I mean, just profoundly inspiring. Anybody that's ever set foot in the attic is just blown away by the resilience of these young people, but their just vast creativity and the way they approach the challenges they have in their lives, and the way they approach their pride with who they are, right? So it was wonderful to be able to start there with the attic. But I would say the other side of that coin is that these young people are experiencing so often they're experiencing challenges that no young person should have to experience. And so while I was at the attic, I did work with young people who were struggling with addiction, who were struggling with homelessness, who sometimes were engaged in sex work, and really outside of the attic did not have resources to help meet those needs. And being a social worker, that's so often the experience, is that you're kind of there on the front lines, you're there on the ground floor, and you really want to do what you can to connect young people to the resources that they need. And so that's why after my first year with the attic, I went ahead and did my internship with Equality PA and did the Youth Law Project. And that was an opportunity to work with young people who were being bullied in their schools at that time. That was 2008. Maybe something like that. So there was like this surge in, I think it's 2007, the surge in bullying in high schools and even middle schools and throughout the state. And so I teamed up with an attorney, and we would essentially go into these schools because administrators weren't doing anything about this injustice that these young people were experiencing. And sometimes all you need is a strongly worded letter or a threat, and say, you can keep turning a blind eye to this, but to be very clear, you will be sued, for millions of dollars, and that's what did it. And so we were able to get some young people those resources, and that was some really exciting work. And then I went on to kind of serve on boards at William Way and to create social and nice places for queer women of color and trans folks. And so did all kinds of interesting, and organizing the Dyke March for about a decade. But a lot of my work is in community activism and community advocacy, which I think is a really interesting approach to bring to government work. I always kind of joke that I'm nobody's bureaucrat. I also joke that with my activist background, I don't know how the heck I got in City Hall, but I'm going to do everything I can before they figure out that I'm in there and rip me out. But no, it's been an awesome experience, and it's been really cool to be able to affect change from this side.
I mean, you've just said so much.
Yeah.
And I, as an activist that started like in the 80s and experienced all those closed doors at City Hall, I can't applaud you enough for being able to get in there and do this very important work. I was also a queer youth in the 80s when the resources were zero. So to have that perspective and to have seen the Attic Youth Center be created, and Carrie Jacobs, I know her as well. So I just can't thank you enough for your hard work. Please keep it up.
Thank you so much for saying that.
So for folks that don't know about the Mayor's Office on LGBT Affairs and the commission that goes along with that, tell people what resources you offer and what is it that you do there?
So it's interesting. People always ask me and say, I've heard about the office, but I'm not really sure what you guys do over there. And it's a good time to ask the question because we have really kind of gotten a facelift. We've changed dramatically in the last year and some change that I kind of took the reins at that office. So traditionally we've been a very policy focused office, which is really why Philadelphia is one of the most LGBTQ friendly cities in the country. We do incredible work for protecting our LGBTQ residents. But about a year, maybe about 2 years ago, the mayor said, policy is really great, but what good is it if people don't feel connected to that? Right? If it doesn't really resonate with them. So what can we do to make this office more outward facing? And so that's why he brought a kind of community activist, community advocate in. And what I've done is kept policy, we do that, but we also do a lot of advocacy work. We do tons of community engagement, and we do lots of education, right? And so you break that down kind of daily what that looks like. The policy work looks like kind of capital P policy. Like just later on today, we'll be doing a bill signing, and so the mayor is signing into law. He's changing it's actually a resolution that came out of City Council, but changing all gendered marital signifiers in city law. So right now, there are still places in our code that say husband and wife, and so we're removing all of that and replacing it with spouse, which is huge for the LGBT community, and making sure our unions and our marriages are recognized, but also it's big for transgender folks and non-binary folks, right, that really need kind of gender-neutral language. So we do capital P policy like that, or we'll do advocacy. I have young people that are coming to my office, trans folks that came to my office just yesterday saying, you know, I've experienced this injustice in my neighborhood, right? Maybe a neighbor is harassing me, or I'm having a difficulty with this community organization or this city agency. Can you help me? So we'll advocate on behalf of those individuals. We have our community engagement efforts, which I get most excited about, and that's probably a social worker in me and event planner. But we had the LGBT State of the Union that happened just at the end of May. We have community conversations that we do all over the place. We have huge events that we do that the office has never really participated in before. We still do our flag raisings and things like that, but we blew it out for Pride Month. And that's our community engagement effort, bringing what we're doing to the community so they can feel connected to our work. And then the education piece is doing trainings with city agencies. So we're training the police department tomorrow, and we'll be training some foster care agencies that tomorrow as well. My deputy director is training the medical examiner's office right now. So we do kind of internal and external agencies to make sure that city government is as inclusive and understanding of LGBTQ issues as possible.
You mentioned the flag raising, and I see you're wearing your pin
That's
with
right.
the new flag. Can you let people know the significance of the new flag and why it's so important at this time?
Yeah, we've been having some pretty challenging conversations in the LGBTQ community for a long time, especially in Philadelphia, about race and discrimination, and specifically racism in the LGBTQ community. I think there was this understanding, it was absolutely not accurate, but this theory that because LGBTQ people are a marginalized group, they could not oppress other groups, and that's just, nothing could be further from the truth. LGBTQ people can be racist in the same way that people of color can be homophobic or transphobic, right? And you say that and people are like, yeah, exactly, right? Just because you're a member of a marginalized group doesn't mean you can't marginalize others. And so what we've seen in Philadelphia over the last 30 years is like documented proof that we have a serious issue with racism and discrimination within our LGBTQ community. And it's not just a Philadelphia problem. It happens all over the country. I was out in LA before I moved back to Philadelphia, and so I always say from West Hollywood to the West Village and Boys Town to Buckhead, and all of our neighborhoods across the country, this issue is it's persistent and it's consistent. The difference in Philadelphia is that like we will grab a problem and we will deal with it, right? We're a city of first. We always say that. We are a city of activists, and you said we're essentially like not in this house, right? So my office had some challenges kind of addressing this in the past, and we wanted to have a symbolic and substantive approach to this issue. And the substantive approach was changes in legislation, which happened last June, to adding some anti-discrimination, kind of beefing up the Fair Practices Ordinance and giving the Philadelphia Commission on Human Relations the opportunity to shut down a business that's discriminating. So there was like substantive measures and community conversations and hearings, and then the symbolic measure was a flag, adding 2 simple stripes to a flag that we know and love. One black, one brown, to stand in solidarity with LGBTQ people of color whose stories have been left out, been erased, been whitewashed for a long time, and saying like, we see you, we hear you, we love you, and we are not going to ignore these issues any longer. So it was a big initiative that had some mixed reviews. I think whenever we're talking about issues with racism in this country, it is it is going to be a battle, unfortunately, but it's been fascinating seeing the response a year since. I mean, it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. I mean, it's made it to the red carpet at the Met Gala, which is very cool.
I mean, could we just clone you, please, and get like 10 of you, because you have such
that
a
would
good
actually
attitude.
make my life a lot easier.
Oh my gosh, you have such a good attitude, and it's so important that we work together in coalition.
We have to.
We have to, especially now with the
Especially
right
now.
on the rise.
Ooh,
People
gracious.
have got to remember these things.
If there's anything that we have learned, right, it's that we are all we've got. Like, that's it. And my office talks about intersectionality all the time, like recognizing not just our diversity around the table, right, but how our oppressions kind of layer and intersect. And those of us with privilege needing to step up and really sometimes put ourselves on the line, put our bodies on the line, and also sometimes get out of the way to make space for people who have been historically oppressed and marginalized. And they're difficult conversations to have, but we have got to do this together or else, right?
Well, speaking of difficult conversations, you led a series of like town hall meetings after some really heavy stuff regarding racial discrimination happened in Philadelphia. How important is it to hold these spaces and to listen?
So back to the point that we were just talking about right now, our communities are in pain, our country is in pain, right? And to that point of intersectionality, if you have different layers of oppression, you are experiencing that pain exponentially. And I say all that, and not to sound all social worker, but I can't help it. But we have got to be intentional about addressing that pain and giving space for people's stories and experiences to be heard, right? What we know are that people are hurting, and frankly, hurt people hurt people. So if we don't address that pain, it's going to externalize itself in ways that are going to be destructive. And so what I have found is that we in city government have an opportunity to provide spaces for people to be heard. And sometimes we say community conversations, and really it ends up being a panel. We put a bunch of experts in front of folks and tell you what resources we have and how we can help you. And I said, I'm sick of that model. We are the experts of our own experience. We're the experts of our community. We're going to have real community conversations where, like, some folks that are experts can talk about what they have, but the vast majority of it is going to be community saying, now listen to us and listen to what our experience has been and what we need. And the result has been extraordinary. It's really been extraordinary. And it's just a start, but it's a start.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's part of why Philly Cam exists, to empower people to tell their stories and to document what's happening. A lot of these issues are not featured prominently in mainstream media,
exactly
and
right.
the people often telling these stories aren't representing these groups.
That's exactly right.
So that's why we really encourage people to tell their own story and to let people know what's really going on.
We should add a hotline from your office, like a little red phone, like on Batman, and whenever you get somebody, just like put them on the phone.
Put 'em on.
We'll book you this afternoon.
I
Come on
love
down.
it. I'm a big Batman fan, so I'm here for the reference.
Okay, fantastic.
But also, I like the
didn't date
content.
myself
of
too
that.
much.
Not at all. Not at
Part
all.
of what Ricky does too on his show is allow people to connect their experiences with music. Music can be very therapeutic.
Of course, healing.
And the arts, which brings us to the event, but how important it is for people to, tell their side of the story. And not just people from the LGBT community, but allies and family members.
Yeah, that's been so rewarding for me, which is to bring the human face to these issues. So I'm completely behind everything you're saying here today. I'm with you 100%. And again, that's an open invitation to please send people down here. We want to tell their stories.
We need that. We need that for sure. Elevate those voices.
One of the other things that, is really pervasive here in Philadelphia, the largest, poorest city in the country, is the issue of poverty. Philly Cam is part of an initiative, through the Solutions Journalism Program to participate in Broken Philly, which is talking about issues of poverty, but from the perspective of the people who are experiencing it, and to change the vocabulary around how we talk about people experiencing poverty. You mentioned your work, working with youth. Some of the most vulnerable people experiencing poverty are homeless, LGBT youth. How as a community can we better support this population and work together, as Ricky mentioned, in a coalition?
Yes. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because whenever anyone's talking about poverty in the city, I always talk about the fact that because not only are we the largest, poorest city, but also we have an overrepresentation of young people in this city, and we have an overrepresentation of LGBTQ people. You put that together, and we have an overrepresentation of people of color. You put these different groups and these oppressed groups together, and you have an overrepresentation of young people of color who are LGBTQ identified. And that statistic is important because we know nationally the number is as much as 40% of young people who are homeless identify as LGBTQ. That number is staggering because proportionally it should be, it should be 0, right? But it should be 10%, 40%. It is a profound overrepresentation, and it's common sense. Why? These young people are being kicked out of their homes, or they're leaving their homes because they're not tenable environments, right? They say, with the discrimination that I'm facing, the violence that I'm facing, the abuse that I'm facing at home, I'll just go at it alone. I'll just figure it out. Sometimes they're engaging in foster care systems that aren't meeting their needs. Sometimes they're placed in homes that are just as homophobic or transphobic as their homes of origin, right? In Philadelphia, that number 40%, you talk to some agencies, it could be as high as 50, 54% in Philadelphia. So it's terrifying. But we work closely with the Attic Youth Center, with Valley Youth House, who are doing this work with LGBTQ young people all the time, and not just giving them not just giving them shelter, but giving them comprehensive programming. Because when you're experiencing homelessness at such a young age, your life, frankly, is just put on hold for a while, right? We think about Maslow's kind of hierarchy of needs, and you are looking at making sure you have food, right? Making sure you have a place to sleep that's safe. You're not worried about financial literacy, right? You're not worried about necessarily your education. You need to meet those basic needs. So for me, as a queer person, thinking about an entire generation of young people experiencing this issue at rates they never have before it's terrifying. And the rates are higher than they've ever been before because young people are receiving images that are telling them it's safe to come out. And it's safer for some folks. It's not as safe for others. So they're coming out and they are meeting resistance with their families and with their safety nets. So we work with these organizations to as a community to take care of these young people. And I'm also excited to announce that the Gloria Caceres homes for LGBTQ that will be opening up within the year, which is huge. It's an initiative from Project Home. It's beautiful. It's named after Gloria because this was obviously incredibly important to her during her time. And we broke ground about 5 months ago. And so this is the first of its kind in the state, one of the first of its kind in the country.
That's amazing.
That's fantastic.
Well, desperately needed, obviously.
Yeah.
Well, a few weeks ago, we had folks who are representing LGBT elders because May is Older Adult Month.
That's right.
And so we were talking about how we can support them, and then also talking about, a residential building that's just for LGBT population, and having these spaces is super important, especially as people, lack a lot of resources and support as they age, and especially young people as well who also lack that safety net to be able to have an environment that's a safe space for them.
That's exactly right.
So speaking of safe spaces, you mentioned earlier the LGBT State of the Union.
Yes.
Why is it important to have your own State of the Union and your own space for dialogue to address these issues, and how did it go?
Yeah. Well, it's important to have it because we deserve it. But also, this is the first of its kind in a capacity like this. We were so lucky to partner with the Kimmel Center. We had done community conversations kind of in different parts of the, in different areas in downtown, and the Kimmel Center said, well, we want to be a venue for that. And I said, you feel like you've made it with the Kimmel Center. So, so I said, I think I've got something in mind that would fit this venue. And so the opportunity was back to what I was saying in the beginning, just a chance to get our leaders in the room with the people who are interacting with these organizations, who are affected by these organizations. And so the design that I created was each of the leaders, the organizational leaders, the executive directors and CEOs had 7 minutes to kind of give their pitch about what they had done in the past year, their kind of highlights and accomplishments, and their priorities moving forward for fiscal year 19. And then the community had 40 minutes at the end when we did breakout groups to sit one-on-one like this with the people that are leading these organizations. So you picked where you wanted to go. Did you want to listen to the Mazzoni Center? Did you want to learn more about William Way, the Attic, DVLF, the Independence Business Alliance, which is our LGBT Chamber of Commerce? What fit your interests? And you sit there in a group of 10 people, 5 people, 20 people, and get to talk directly to the executive director and the CEO. Say, hey, I really love to hear what you're doing for youth, but what are you doing about immigration, right? Why, if you had 7 minutes, why didn't we hear anything about housing, right? Why didn't we hear anything about elders? What's going on with HIV, right? And it was phenomenal to see the exchange of ideas, right? And these EDs, they speak to a board, they speak to kind of their upper level staff, and every once in a while they have a big staff meeting where they get to talk to their full staff, but very rarely do they get to talk to 400 community members about the work they're doing, and the work, more importantly, that they should be doing. So it went incredibly well, it went extraordinarily, and we're excited to try to make it an annual event.
That's awesome.
I'm mad I missed it.
There'll be more. There'll be more.
Okay.
Well, one of the things I wanted to mention, is, community organizations are vital to our communities, especially ones that serve these special populations. And when a shakeup happens at an organization like the Mazzoni Center or, some of the other immigration or immigrant organizations also face a shakeup in their administration, how does the community move forward after this, and how do we rebuild trust, especially when we rely on these organizations, because there aren't that many of them doing this kind of work.
There's not that many, and they are doing such specialized work, right? That's the other part. So many of us LGBTQ people go to these organizations because these organizations are not just safe spaces for us, but they're the experts on the care that we need, the resources that we need, and so that's essential, right? How does the community approach these kinds of shakeups? I think what's important to note about our Philadelphia LGBTQ community is that we are fortunate to have quite a bit of institutional knowledge that exists in kind of our top LGBTQ organizations. For better or for worse, that's the case. I say for better or for worse because a lot of our directors and our folks that are leading our organizations have been doing this work for 15, 20, 25 years. And they've been in the same positions for 15, 20, 25 years, which is wonderful for institutional knowledge. But when it comes to bringing more voices around the table, right, and kind of changing and adjusting with our times and our community and growing with our community, there can be some challenges there. So I think, frankly, that change is necessary. And I can speak on a personal note as a Black queer woman whose identity is not represented in leadership in any of these organizations. Like those three identities are not represented anywhere, and they hadn't been until I took this position. If I'm meeting with these folks, I'm the only one like me in the room. I welcome change, right? I welcome people that look like me and have my experience around the table. I welcome more trans folks and non-binary folks around the table because we don't see enough of those folks. I welcome more youth leading these organizations, more elders for sure. So I think change is necessary and change is good. And what I'm hearing, even from the elders that have been leading our community for a long time, is like, honey, it's time. It can be exhausting to do this work, and I know you get it too, Ricky. It can be exhausting, and so people are ready to pass the torch. Is what I'm starting to hear.
Well, we appreciate your energy and your youth and the community building that you bring to this movement. It's really important. Before we end, we want to mention again the great event that you are working together with Linda and Philly Family Pride. It's the Philly Family Pride Picnic and Arts Festival.
That's right.
And so the mayor's office will be representing.
That's right. And the mayor will be there too.
Yes. And it will take place this weekend at Lovett Library Park at 6945 Germantown Avenue. This Saturday from 11 to 5 p.m. Before we go, tell folks how they can get involved with what you're doing and get in touch with you and learn more about your work.
That's awesome. This is actually a perfect month to do it. I mean, we have really blown Pride out and really said, what can we do to make this month not just about the parade and the festival? What can we do to make it more inclusive for elders, for people who are living with disabilities, for young people, for people of color, for trans folks, and we have film screenings, we have workshops, we have panels, we have flag raisings and block parties. We even have a night market that's coming up on Thursday, and of course this arts festival. So folks are welcome to find us on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter, and we have a webpage. Literally just Google us and all the things come up because the web addresses are pretty long. So it's just easier to Google it. And we are always asking folks to kind of engage with us and come out and hang out. We're really kind of open. We'll just be hanging out, talking and chatting with community. So if you see us, please say hi. But yeah, please follow us on social media. Sign up for our newsletter. We understand that not everybody is on social media, so we want to be accessible as possible. So.
Well, I want to thank you for joining us today, and I want to thank you too, Ricky.
Absolutely. You know what's cool about you, Amber, is when you talk, light bulbs go off on my head.
That makes me so happy.
So you're a person I want to be around more.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, and happy Pride Month to you both.
Happy
Yeah.
Pride!
To all of our listeners out there, happy Pride. No shame, as Linda said.
That's exactly right.
Be comfortable in the skin you're in. And it's all about love here in Philadelphia. If you would like to see more People Power Lunch Hour, you'd like to be a guest or check out all of our episodes or create your own media and tell your own story, please visit our website at phillycam.org and follow us on social media. Thank you everybody for watching and listening. I'm your host, Vanessa Maria Graber. Till next time.